house was not ransacked. It was not forcibly entered. The doors were locked.
A brutal killing.
It was apparent right then and there that we were dealing with something different.
A housewife, a former medical professional. She was involved in her local community.
A very devoted mother of a little boy.
Who had the motive to kill this lady?
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
You have 4 and 5 different pieces of DNA, all from different people?
The person that claimed that they were a soldier of God, soldier of death.
It was just bizarre.
The truth will be revealed.
I would not know how to classify it other than an assassination.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. The sleepy town of Williamsport, Pennsylvania, nestled in a lush valley, surrounded by forest.
Williamsport has a long history, tradition. You go back to the lumber barons, and of course, Little League Baseball started here. It's just a nice place to grow up, and you usually don't fear for your safety.
But one January morning, a grim discovery shatters that serenity.
We received a call from 911 indicating that a woman had been found in her residence. A friend, Dwayne Van Fleet, had gone to try to locate her. He found that the residence was locked. There was no answer at any of the doors. He looked through a window and observed the victim on the kitchen floor. The victim's name was Miriam Ellis. It was obvious that she was deceased.
She's killed based on a gunshot to her back in the area of her heart.
It's up to state troopers William Holmes and Scott Henry to find her killer. The first step is questioning the man who made the 911 call.
One of the things you do first off the bat is try to find out about as much about the victim and their life as you can.
Mr. Van Fleet was one that was able to provide a fair amount of information to us.
Miriam Ellis was a housewife, a former medical professional. She was involved in her local community, and part of the reason they found her that day was she didn't show up to teach Sunday school.
She was an extremely good person, very devoted mother of a little boy.
She had a certain amount of stature, and a lot of people knew her.
One of the things that I recall with talking to him was she had no enemies. She had no enemies. Everyone got along with her.
Who would have a motive to do this to a middle-aged Sunday school teacher in Pennsylvania?
Investigators need to unlock every detail of Miriam's last 24 hours. But there's one key problem.
In any murder investigation, it becomes important to try to establish the time of death. A lot of times that's established with eyewitnesses. Somebody sees the crime occur. However, in this case, there were no eyewitnesses.
They look to Miriam herself for an approximate time of death.
The body can tell many tales. How long it's been there, rigor mortis, lividity, aid in determining, at least initially, how long this person's been deceased. And these are things that we are trained to look at.
There was some blood on her body. It appeared that she had laid there for a while. In canvassing the area, we couldn't find anybody that had seen her after 5 o'clock Friday evening, the 15th.
Without more information, investigators can only determine a wide window for the murder, placing it sometime late Friday night. They turn to the crime scene, looking for clues about the killer.
The house was not disheveled, it was not ransacked, it was not forcibly entered. The doors were locked. All the exterior doors were locked to the residence, the garage. There was a handset for a telephone within close proximity to her hand.
As detectives subpoena her phone records, they face an uphill battle. A much-loved mother, killed within her locked house. Then, a keen eye spots a critical clue.
We noticed a bullet hole in the window at that time.
It was a double-pane exterior window. It was located directly above the kitchen sink.
It was apparent that the shot had come from the outside.
Our theory at that point was that, she was leaning, standing up against the kitchen sink, talking on the telephone when the round was fired that struck and killed her.
For a gunshot to be fired outside of the residence through a window, striking somebody, killing them, was something that I had not seen before.
This was in a residential neighborhood. There was no hunting season that was in effect. This was clearly not a hunting accident.
I would not know how to classify it as other than an assassination.
Somebody deliberately chose to set up, lie in wait, and assassinate Miriam Ellis, sniper style, through her kitchen window.
It was shocking because this woman was murdered in her own home, and it doesn't happen that way.
That single shot is now the only lead.
When the investigators then traced trajectory of the shot back, it took them back to a stream bed in behind Miriam Ellis's house.
And then, as we looked a little further, our forensics team was able to find footprints.
They came from a Reebok full tilt basketball shoe, and that was the tread pattern. Size 14, they were positioned in a way where someone took up a shooting position alongside a tree that was directly back from Miriam's kitchen window. The investigators also found a cigarette butt in the area where the shot had been taken.
As they looked further, they were able to find what turned out to be a homemade silencer.
Very rare, at least in my career, did you find a silencer. It was apparent right then and there that we were dealing with something different.
This establishes how Miriam Ellis was shot, but the mystery of who did it and why remains.
For an execution-style killing, you have to have it planned. You have to have it planned in advance. Either the person wanting someone dead has to retain someone to do the crime, or they have to do it themselves and try to cover up their tracks.
Somebody has taken great steps, great pains to plan out and execute this murder. It was not like Miriam was involved in some type of criminal enterprise, or that she was doing some kind of risky behavior where she was putting herself in harm's way. She was at home on a Friday night.
Was she concerned or afraid for her life? What was going on in the last 24? Was she hiding? Did she say anything to anybody? Who saw her come home? These are all factors that become critical to helping you investigate the case.
Some of those questions may soon be answered.
As the investigators were processing the scene, Dr. Richard Ellis showed up.
Dr. Richard Ellis was a heart surgeon here in the Williamsport hospital. He was well known, and a lot of people called him a lifesaver.
When a woman's murdered in her home, you must look at the husband first. They're the closest to the deceased. They're the ones that ought to be able to give you the most information.
It's difficult to talk with grieving family members about this, but by the same token, they want to know, and they want to help, and therefore they'll do anything they can.
Dr. Ellis tells investigators he last saw Miriam when he stopped by the house 2 days earlier, on Friday at 5 p.m.
He was going to visit his family, which was down in the Chester County area of Pennsylvania.
Detectives then learn the couple had recently separated after being married for 8 years.
Miriam Ellis had moved out of the family residence. Primary custody of their son, Richie Ellis, 5-year-old, was with Miriam Ellis, and her husband had visitation time with Richie every other weekend. The fact that they were going through this divorce established a potential motive.
You have to look at, how was their relationship? Were they happy? Were they unhappy? Were there any public instances of, fights? That type of thing. You have to look at all of those variables.
Was it a argument that went bad? Well, not in this case. Not when you have a sniper fire.
Beyond the facts, a seasoned detective would be looking for tells. Everyone has them. Everyone has some sort of give, if you will. Detectives are trained to recognize all of that.
As they probe further, the doctor's behavior seems off.
One of the first things he said, after being told that Miriam was dead, he asked what evidence was found, which the investigators thought was odd.
It seemed kind of a strange question for somebody to ask at that point.
He then makes an interesting admission.
He told us he was no stranger to firearms. He had a hunting background and that he had owned some firearms, which a lot of people in this area do. That's not a big deal. But we wanted to take a look and see what he had and if it related to, the crime scene at all.
We were able to determine that bullet that killed her was a .22, which gave us information on what type of weapon to look for.
And in fact, they did obtain and take from Dr. Ellis numerous .22 caliber class rifles.
This puts Miriam's former partner front and center.
Love can very easily turn into hate, and that hate can grow and grow and grow until you can't think about anything else other than that person who you hate being dead.
Dr. Richard Ellis has become the first suspect in his wife's murder. While his guns are sent for testing, investigators scrutinize his life.
He did, of course, as a cardiothoracic surgeon, make a very good living financially. He was paying quite a sum of money in child support per month. I believe the total was somewhere in the area of $12,000.
That was the largest support order that had ever been entered in Lycoming County history.
Killing somebody for money is not uncommon. In fact, it's the opposite. You're either killing somebody for money or you're killing somebody for love. Those are the two main reasons anybody ends up dead.
With an age-old motive for murder, investigators press the doctor for details on where he was when Miriam was shot.
Dr. Ellis was supposed to pick Richie up for the weekend visitation on Friday evening.
Dr. Ellis decided to spend the weekend with his sister, 2.5 hours away in Honeybrook, Pennsylvania. He can substantiate the start of his journey through a witness, Nancy Mitch.
It was a friend of Miriam's that had stopped by to visit, to speak for a few minutes, chit-chatting.
Nancy Mitch was able to explain to investigators that she was with Miriam to be present during the exchange when Miriam transferred their son Richie to Dr. Richard Ellis for the weekend.
Dr. Ellis was supposed to pick Richie up on Friday evening at 4 o'clock. We had learned from Nancy that he was a little late getting there. He picked up his son at Miriam's residence approximately 5 o'clock, so we knew he left the residence with his son. Nancy had left and Miriam seemed to be okay.
So we could last verify that Miriam was alive around 6 p.m. on Friday, January 15th.
Dr. Ellis says he then made a quick pit stop before heading to his sister's.
They'd gone home to his house first.
He had left for southeastern Pennsylvania approximately 9:30 in the evening with his son.
He said they drove to Lewisburg and stopped at a fast food restaurant.
He had indicated that that stop was sometime around 10 p.m. The weather was bad that evening, and he called his sister around 11:24 p.m. and indicated that he was going to stop, and him and Richie were going to spend the night in the Harrisburg area.
Nancy has confirmed one piece of Dr. Ellis's alibi. Detectives must now determine if the rest of his information is accurate.
They could verify the cell phone call to his sister on the phone records. And we know that Dr. Ellis had checked in at 12:57 a.m. at a hotel in the Harrisburg area. That gives him a clear check-in time, a receipt for when he's there, so he has corroboration for his whereabouts.
Dr. Ellis's story seems to hold up, but investigators also check him against the physical evidence.
The center of the silencer had holes that were drilled through it. That was used to affix the silencer to the murder weapon. None of his guns had such a thing. There was nothing that could establish the murder weapon, but it was Dr. Ellis's gun. In addition, there was some DNA that was found on hairs inside the silencer. And there was DNA found in a cigarette butt. Ultimately, the DNA that was tested did not match Dr. Richard Ellis.
According to the evidence, Dr. Ellis was nowhere near the house at the time of the murder. But as they press for more information, he makes another admission.
Dr. Ellis was having an affair.
He had developed a romantic relationship with a coworker who he worked with at the Williamsport Hospital. And that may have led in part to the separation.
It seemed like very similar circumstances to how he met Miriam. He started working with her. They developed this relationship and got married. And then it was kind of the same way with Katie. She actually took Miriam's job and then ended up a relationship.
It's one of the oldest crimes in the books, so to speak, is love triangle murders. Perhaps as many as 15 or 20% of the ones I investigated involved a love triangle of some kind.
The other woman, Katie Suarez, potentially would have a motive to kill Miriam. She could have wanted Dr. Ellis all for herself and to get Miriam out of the picture to eliminate the chance that Dr. Ellis would go back with his wife.
Jealousy is an amazing thing because jealousy often leads to obsession, and obsession is what drives people to commit horrific acts.
But there's more at stake than just their relationship.
Between a potential divorce and the alimony, there was a lot of money involved there. There's a big financial issue. If Miriam left the picture all of a sudden, she would reap the benefits of anything that he would gain.
Detectives must determine where Richard's new girlfriend was when Miriam was killed.
Katie Suarez was somebody that he would have spent a lot of his free time with and that would be around him, but if he was going to travel out of town to visit his family, that would give her the opportunity to commit the crime.
They quickly track Katie down.
We learned that she was definitely out of town visiting relatives in another state at the time that Miriam was murdered. No way she could have done it, not possible. As we continue with the investigation, we can't find anybody else that has any motive to have this lady killed.
Then, the assassin reaches out to them.
There were these letters sent to the police station.
The first anonymous letter, right off the bat, claimed that the writer was responsible for killing Miriam Ellis.
I had been involved in, probably hundreds, if not thousands, of criminal prosecutions. I'd never had a case with an anonymous letter. I mean, you see it on TV, but it's not something that really happens.
In a sensational twist, a self-professed killer writes a letter to police.
There was a lot of thoughts that go through your mind. You're thinking, is this somebody that's just making this up? Somebody that just saw the case in the news and was sending these letters out and they had nothing to do with it?
The person that claimed that they were a soldier of God, soldier of equality, soldier of death, they claimed that the victim was racist and they wanted to harvest the racist people in this town.
I remember it being very explicit about Miriam being wicked. And I believe there's certainly some racist comments that were included in the letter itself.
It didn't make any sense. There was nothing that we had that supported that accusation at all. It was just bizarre. It was very strange.
While the murderer seems to be reaching out, they've also gone to great lengths to obscure their identity.
The letters were tested for fingerprints. There weren't any.
They were handwritten in block printing in pencil.
This was in such a way that you wouldn't be able to tell how that person typically writes. So you couldn't make a comparison later at trial if you wanted to.
As investigators puzzle over the letter and its contents, another one arrives.
The second one, it had a different tone. It was indicative that the writer had a superior intellect and we didn't. It smacked of arrogance.
This second letter also points investigators towards a new suspect.
The author described himself as having advanced degrees, having many advanced degrees.
It indicated to us that possibly an associate of Dr. Ellis's may be the person that did it or the person that wrote the letter.
He's talking about Dr. Zama. He was very good friends with Mrs. Ellis. He and Dr. Ellis were partners.
But again, Dr. Ellis was the chief of cardiothoracic surgery. That may have created some friction between the two of them.
They were the two cardiothoracic surgeons for Williamsport Hospital.
The writer claimed that they were a superior intellect, that they spoke 5 different languages or several different languages, which Dr. Zama did.
Dr. Zama happened to be African American. In fact, he was probably one of the few African American people that were in the Ellis's kind of inner circle of friends. He happened to be a tall guy that probably had pretty large feet, potentially size 14. He was certainly somebody that the investigators had to look at now as a result of the letters.
Dr. Zama is brought in for questioning.
The investigators actually showed the letters to Dr. Zama. They asked, who's this describing? And he indicated that it looked like the letters were describing him.
But he is adamant he played no part in Miriam's death and never wrote the letters.
Dr. Zama got along with Miriam, and they were friends.
She was the wife of a colleague, and that was as far as their relationship went.
He also claimed to have been with friends during the window of time in which Miriam was murdered.
The investigators checked out Dr. Zama's alibi for the evening of the 15th. They confirmed that he had an airtight alibi. The anonymous letters were also processed for DNA.
There was a black hair in the glued flap of the envelope that was sticking out like a sore thumb.
The DNA was tested and it didn't match Dr. Zama, but it didn't match any other of the samples of DNA collected in the case either.
The investigators now believe they're being played.
Whoever did these letters was taking all these steps to conceal their identity. They were taking the steps to make sure that they weren't using saliva to lick the glue flap or to lick the stamp. But here this large hair was predominantly placed right there in the glue flap for someone to find. It was really when that happened that I personally really started to think that there was a lot of planting of evidence going on here. A silencer with additional DNA, a cigarette butt with DNA. When it didn't match each other, it became apparent it was being planted. Now you have 4 and 5 different pieces of DNA, all from different people? Were there 5 people involved in this crime? No.
Many steps were taken to execute this plan. At the end of the day, you have to think either that he's just a psychopath or that he was really enjoying the whole process and didn't want it to stop.
The problem for troopers Holmes and Henry is that this realization puts them no closer to catching Miriam's killer.
I think we entered a time that we kind of felt like we were spinning our wheels. We were frustrated because of some of the things that had been occurring.
You want to do the right job, you want to do it correctly, you get one shot at it, and you don't want to mess up. You know, if you do, then that's the one shot you get.
Then, when a subpoena they'd been waiting for since day one is approved, it unlocks a key piece of the puzzle.
There was a handset for a telephone within close proximity to our hand.
The investigators got the phone records for Miriam.
We came to find out that there was a friend that she had been speaking to on the telephone Friday evening that had actually called her.
She indicated that she heard the sound of glass breaking during the phone call, and she heard Miriam say, "Oh my God," and then didn't hear anything else. At that time, she hung up the phone. She called back, and she got a busy signal. And then she just assumed that they had gotten cut off, and now Miriam was talking to somebody else on the phone.
This new information gives investigators something they'd been missing: an exact time of death.
The conversation ended at 10:37 p.m.
So we could tell that that call had ended the moment we believe Miriam was shot.
The time of death was everything.
Armed with the time of death of exactly 10:37 p.m., detectives recheck the alibis of all persons of interest. The only one that doesn't add up belongs to Dr. Ellis.
Initially, he said that he had been in the Williamsport area, and he was already south on Route 15 by 10 p.m.
They said they stopped to get a bite at a restaurant.
If in fact he was there at around 10 o'clock, he could not have committed the crime. On the surface, it looked like it checked out, but they really couldn't verify that he was actually there at that 10 p.m. time frame.
That made his alibi look a little shaky at that point.
A well-planned or perfectly planned murder, you generally solve through the small details within the case. Small detail will include, to a great degree, timing. The timeline becomes critical in most cases, if not all cases.
Investigators break down every detail of Dr. Ellis' story.
They traveled south on Route 15, and he made a call to his sister at 11:24.
He had called to tell her that they were going to have to stop and stay at a hotel.
The only real hard time they could verify was the cell phone call to his sister.
They use this information to determine the closest point Dr. Ellis could have been from Miriam's house when he made the call.
We knew the route he had taken that evening because he had told us. We knew he was in a certain radius from the cell phone tower that his call came from, that his call bounced off of that cell phone tower.
Once we contacted the cell phone company and got the coverage maps,
we were able to determine approximately where that phone call was made in relation to the crime scene and in relation to the hotel.
And we found that he could have been much farther north on Route 15 than he had indicated.
The question investigators now have to answer is whether Dr. Ellis could have taken the shot at 10:37, made the call to his sister at 11:24, and still made it to the hotel for 1 a.m.
We wanted to drive the route under those same conditions. We checked that night, were there any accidents that would have delayed traffic? Of course, the weather was bad. Was there a road closure? We actually even wore some sneakers that were somewhat similar to the ones that were worn that night. Went from the scene on foot, followed that dry stream bed to a vehicle, and drove to the location within the area he could have made a call from that night on his cell phone, and we found out that it was possible to do that.
Just the fact that they could recreate the timeline and it worked, it blew everyone away.
All the dots have to be connected. You have to go with what may seem to detectives initially to be something relatively trivial can become extremely important as the investigation unfolds.
Dr. Richard Ellis is now the only suspect without an alibi. Next, investigators need to find a way to tie him to the murder itself.
Two young men were looking for minnows in one of our local creeks, and while doing this, they come upon a modified rifle.
They thought it looked strange, or for whatever reason, they picked it up, called the police. It's a cut-off barrel. It's a cut-off stock. It's got a scope on it. It's not something you might find every day.
The bolt from the gun had been removed and discarded. Any of the markings on the gun had been drilled out of them to hide the serial numbers. But there was a clip in the gun, so they could actually see that the caliber of that gun was a .22. This was consistent with the bullet that had murdered Miriam.
Most intriguing of all, however, is where it was found.
The partial rifle was located within close proximity to the route that Dr. Ellis told us he traveled the night at the homicide.
Using the silencer recovered from the scene, they have a way to determine if this rare gun is the murder weapon.
On the top of the barrel, there was a screw that had been screwed in and added to it that would had to have been done to the gun to accept the silencer. So when you took the components of the silencer and you slid them over the barrel of the gun and turned it, it fit.
There was a stir in the crime room. You knew that this was the weapon we had been looking for.
Now the question becomes tying that gun to the perpetrator.
I was tasked with running down the particulars of the weapon. That was a Savage Model 23 rifle. Trooper Holmes made a trip down to speak to Dr. Ellis's family.
He learns that Dr. Ellis had inherited his father's guns, and his Aunt Jean is the only person left who knows about them.
She had brought out a photo album and was leafing through it, showing the investigators some old photos. One of the photos she flipped to was a black and white photo of her brother posing with a rifle in one hand and a dead groundhog in the other.
When he brought that photograph back, we were able to determine that that was a Savage Model 23D.
The more coincidences that pile up, the less chance that it actually is a coincidence. You can plan your murder out down to the T, but you can never rule out the fact that a fisherman walking in the Pennsylvania woods is going to step on a gun that was willed to you by your father.
We had the connection.
Investigators have recovered the weapon they believe Richard Ellis used to kill his estranged wife, Miriam. The challenge now will be to secure a conviction, despite the maze of conflicting forensic evidence.
It was very frustrating for the case, because even though by this time we had our belief that, Dr. Ellis may be involved, as a prosecutor, I know this is going to be an extremely difficult case to win in front of a jury, because I've got multiple pieces of DNA that don't match the accused.
You can only convict if the only logical inference that can be drawn is the person's guilt. And so if there's an alternate suspect who doesn't have an alibi, that's your reasonable doubt.
So we went back to the area where the gun was found, and we started looking and got lucky again. We found a set of shoes up there, athletic shoes.
They were determined to be the same size as the footprints from the scene. They were determined to be the same tread pattern, so they were the same shoe that was used to make the imprints.
You knew when you saw those. Those were the shoes that had taken the killer in and taken the killer out.
They must now prove the shoes were worn by Richard Ellis.
We still had the issue that they're a size 14 and he wears a size 10. And of course, it would have been very possible for somebody with a size 10 shoe to wear a 14.
They are sent to the lab for forensic testing.
They found a hair on one of the tongues of one of the sneakers. They did DNA testing on that, and that came back to not match Dr. Ellis.
But if the investigators are right, Dr. Ellis wasn't the only person at the scene that night.
We believe that somehow he drugged his son, Richie, and he was asleep in the car.
Obviously, the son didn't have those shoes on, but transfer theory is if you leave a room or enter it, you're picking up evidence or you're leaving evidence, be it hair or fibers, anything to that effect. So there would explanation of how that hair could have got there.
We tested that against Richie Ellis, Dr. Ellis' son, and we got a mitochondrial match to that. The link came down to a hair from a 5-year-old.
Richard Ellis planned to use false DNA to throw the police off his track. But in the end, his son's DNA links him to the murder.
You have a theory. You start with a theory in a homicide investigation or any criminal case. We had our theory in this case. And this evidence, the picture, this evidence from the sneaker, this evidence from the bullet in the magazine of the rifle. All of these things corresponded with our thoughts, our theory. They supported it. And it's physical evidence. That's powerful stuff. It doesn't lie.
As Ellis is arrested for the murder of his estranged wife, investigators are left with the chilling knowledge of how he killed her.
Dr. Ellis had prepared some time in advance to commit this murder. He would have had to have done that because the gun had to be modified, the silencer had to be created and fabricated, all which would have taken a substantial amount of time. He knew that if he was going to kill Miriam, he didn't want his son to be present to find her body, so it had to be on a weekend that Dr. Ellis had custody of his son. This was the weekend when all those stars aligned and gave him the opportunity to commit the crime.
The plan became reality on Friday at 5 p.m. when he picked up his son from Miriam. A few hours later, the doctor returned.
Dr. Ellis parked the car with Richie asleep or drugged, went through the stream bed, got up to a point where he was in position behind Miriam Ellis's kitchen window. And he would have had to have waited there until Miriam would have came into the kitchen and stood in a position that gave him a shot there. If she was anywhere else in the house, he couldn't shoot her. You could only shoot her when she was in that kitchen in front of that window. And at 10:37 p.m., she was in there, was on the phone, and she presented the shot to him, and that's when he killed her. He placed the evidence there in the scene, the cigarette butt, arranged that in a position to be found, and then he would have left the scene, leaving those size 14 tracks. Then he would have gone back to the car with his son and traveled south.
He drove to the first remote place that he could get rid of evidence. He threw out the gun, he threw out the shoes, he returned to the road and continued traveling.
He made a call to his sister at 11:24. Presumably, he's doing this knowing that the records will show up and that, that can assist him in his alibi. But what it actually showed is that he could have committed the offense.
When you took this and you put it in a timeline perspective, that was key.
Richard Ellis is charged with first-degree murder.
When Dr. Ellis was arrested, they found an unfinished manuscript of a book. And the title of the book was Heartshot, Murder of the Doctor's Wife. And the author was Dr. Richard Ellis. And it goes through and it basically documents the murder of Miriam Ellis from the perspective of the killer. And the thing that I remember the most, and I'll never forget really, is that the book describes the killer's emotion at the time. And it described the killer as having an orgasmic catharsis at the time of the murder.
Despite the evidence, Ellis pleads innocent to the charge. But the jury sees things differently.
After a trial in 2004, Dr. Ellis was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
This is just the bad luck if you're him, or the good luck if you're the police. But without that firearm, he would not have been convicted of that crime.
Dr. Ellis was an intelligent man who thought he was probably smarter than he was.
He didn't want his wife to have all his money, and he thought he could get away with it.
I don't know what it was that caused this case to get under our skin, other than that it was something that could happen to any of us. It was the life any of us could have been leading.
We had a little boy here. Very tragic. He was just a little guy who no longer had his mother, and ultimately he lost his father in this.
To do that to your son, to carry out this murder, is just beyond belief.
I've been to a lot of crime scenes, but I've never seen one like this. The brutalness of it.
A murder of excessive cruelty.
What she must have gone through.
You stabbed the girl twice in the neck, and those are the fatal wounds. Why are you poking at her 54 more times?
Was this a sexual homicide? Absolutely.
The victim of an obsessive killer.
I could see where a female of her size could have killed her.
You're beginning to think that there's something wrong with this guy and that he could be your killer. It was just weird. It was just strange.
He was on his toes, but he was the only person that could have committed that crime.
The truth will be revealed.
He who solves the crime is the person that looks, relooks, and looks again. It never ends until you find your killer.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. On Florida's first coast sits the quiet community of Jacksonville Beach, enjoyed by many for its surf, sand, and sunshine.
Jacksonville Beach is kind of a bedroom community for Jacksonville.
We have a huge mix of both young people and your older folks that are retired.
It's not real touristy like other parts of Florida, which is actually fine with the people that live here.
We're a small community here in Jacksonville Beach, so we don't have the really serious crime. I mean, you have your auto burglaries, you have your occasional house burglary, maybe 1 or 2 murders a year. But I mean, we aren't overrun with that stuff.
It's the Thanksgiving holiday, and Jacksonville Beach residents are gathering with their families. But that sense of celebration and security is about to be shattered.
A Jacksonville Beach woman, Corey Parker, was due to go to work at the restaurant that she worked at in Atlantic Beach on Friday. And when she didn't show up that morning, the manager said, well, there's got to be something wrong. So she sent the cook to check on her. When he got there, around 11, she didn't answer. And he walked around the apartment trying to look in the windows. And when he did, he saw a bloody body part.
I got the call from our dispatch that the patrol was working an active suicide. So I told my wife, my 2 kids, I'd be back, hopefully shortly. So I proceeded to Corey Parker's apartment. I've been to a lot of crime scenes, but I've never seen one like this. The brutalness of it and what she must have gone through with all of the stab wounds from the navel up to her throat and even the ones on her face. Absolutely, it was a homicide.
Jacksonville Beach Police Department detectives William Carlisle and Eddie Bounds are assigned to the case.
Corey was covered in blood. There was an extreme amount of blood on the bed. The bed sheets were in disarray.
The victim is Corey Parker, a 25-year-old college student, originally from Rochester, New York.
Corey could just light up the room. Her smile was as big as the day. I call her a social butterfly. She was very, open, very outgoing, so it was easy for her to make friends. I always feel like if I had anything that I needed to talk about, it was always with Corey.
Corey Parker left her home to come here to Florida from New York. She was a college student working 2 jobs. By all accounts, her physical appearance, her demeanor, her personality was easy to like.
She was just full of energy and vim and vitality and just a really nice person. And, so it makes you wonder, who would be so enraged that they would want to take her life.
To find Corey Parker's killer, detectives must piece together the last 24 hours of her life, starting with the crime scene.
They counted over 100 stab wounds on Corey's body, some of them in multiple places.
She had defensive marks, wounds on her arms and hands. She had 2 severe wounds to her throat that were the fatal wounds. There were also 54 stab wounds to her chest and abdomen that were post-mortem after she died. You stabbed the girl twice in the neck, and those are the fatal wounds. Why are you poking at her 54 more times after she's dead? It's indicative of overkill.
When you see the type of brutality that's seen in this case, over 100 stab wounds, there's 2 schools of thought on this. Number 1, this is extreme rage. Someone knew the victim and just keeps stabbing because they hate them that much. On the flip side, there's research my colleagues and I have carried out to confirm that more than 15 stab wounds involving a female is inherently sexual. There is a disorder called picarism, which is sexual gratification obtained, as disturbing as this sounds, from repeatedly penetrating a human body with some type of stabbing instrument.
She was obviously posed on the bed and her legs were spread. For her to be put in that position and to be laid there and rest like that, there's no other reason than wanting to shock somebody that found her.
There was a pair of panties. They appeared to have been taken off of her, so it did look like she was wearing those when she went to bed. The evidence technician examined those panties and they were able to locate a Caucasian head hair, which had a root bulb on the end of it.
Finding hair at a crime scene in itself is not significant unless you have that rich source of DNA, which is in the root of the hair. Without that, hairs can be substantively similar, but it cannot be conclusively linked to a single offender.
Investigators go over the rest of the apartment, looking for any evidence that could lead them to Corey's killer.
There were finger marks on the windowsill, and it appeared that someone had put their hand there to lower himself out of the window after killing Corey. But there was no sign of any ridge detail, fingerprints, so to speak. So you can assume from that that the suspect was wearing gloves. They came prepared because they knew that they were trying to avoid being detected.
Corey's body was found at 11 a.m. on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. But to narrow down her time of death, detectives need to determine when she was last seen alive. They start with her friend and neighbor, Ashley.
The last time I saw Corey was the night before Thanksgiving. She was talking about meeting her friends for Thanksgiving and taking over some pies that she was gonna bake. So she started baking her pies. We had a beer.
Ashley was able to tell us that around 5 or 6 o'clock that she and Corey were interacting together back and forth in the apartment.
After all of that, she was getting ready to go out that night, and that was the last time I saw her.
We learned that Corey had baked the pies so she could attend an orphan's Thanksgiving for people that did not have family in town. She didn't show up for that party, so her friends thought that maybe she got a better offer and decided not to come. Time of death is very hard to pinpoint. They can do it on TV. They can tell you it's the person died at 11 o'clock, but in reality, you really can't do that. So that party helped us fill that immediate timeline prior to her death.
Detectives put Corey Parker's time of death somewhere between 6 p.m. on Wednesday, when she last spoke to Ashley, and 6 p.m. on Thursday, when she didn't show up for her friend's Thanksgiving dinner. Detectives now canvass the neighborhood to see if anyone noticed anything suspicious during that time.
We asked, do you remember who might have been in the neighborhood scene walking around, or suspicious cars, things like that.
Many people are away for Thanksgiving, but there are a few around, among them a 17-year-old neighbor.
We spoke to this guy, Robert. He was just another person that lived in the area near Corey. He said nothing out of the ordinary had happened or been seen in that area at her apartment complex. Said that he was working and apparently was sleeping, he thought, and didn't know what she looked like, didn't know where she lived at, other than we were seeing the police tape around her apartment. He said that's where I figured she lived at because that was all the police activity.
The canvas appears to be pointing in the direction of a dead end until police speak to another neighbor.
He said he'd seen somebody in the back, which would have been the east portion of Corey's apartment. There's an alleyway that leads to a set of convenience stores. And it was that area that he said he saw a guy looking in her back bedroom window.
When we use the term peeping Tom, we usually refer to somebody who's spying on people or looking in on people, say through their windows or otherwise. But they're engaging in this sort of behavior because it's sexually arousing for them. The majority of people who conduct these hands-off sex offenses don't escalate into hands-on offenders, but it can happen. They can become people who would rape or otherwise engage in a violent sexual assault.
Could the actions of a peeping Tom have escalated into the violent murder of Corey Parker?
We started, really hitting that hard, setting up surveillance teams in case he came back. And it's common for people to come back to a crime scene and relive that moment. So we sat up many nights to find somebody or anybody that would lead us to Corey Parker's killer.
Detectives Carlisle and Bounds have honed in on their first lead in Corey Parker's murder. A peeping Tom, recently spotted in her apartment complex.
We were in surveillance mode at that point, looking for any valuable information, but we really didn't have anything specific to go on.
With the peeping Tom lead going nowhere, detectives shift the focus of their investigation.
Rule of thumb in homicide investigation is to talk to an intimate partner, current or former boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, and look at what were the dynamics of this relationship. What were any strains or stresses on the relationship, financial, romantic?
Corey had recently started dating David Tippins, just 3 weeks before her murder.
I remember meeting David one time when he came to pick her up. She really liked him and thought that maybe she could have more feelings for him and that she could possibly be falling in love with him.
Police called David down to the station for questioning.
Investigators got the sense that David was pretty shaken by Corey's murder. He was very upset by it.
He really liked her a lot, and they had been together a lot during the previous weeks before she was murdered.
Corey had spent the night at David's place on Monday night before Thanksgiving and then took him to the airport the next morning. He had gone to Pensacola for the Thanksgiving weekend to be with his family.
We obviously wanted to verify that, and he was able to provide us with plane tickets, both going and coming, that indicated that he was out of town. He was in fact not here during the time that Corey was murdered.
The detectives know from talking to David that he was unable to reach Corey on Thanksgiving Day. And he left a message and she didn't call back.
We have her answering machine, checked everything in there. So he was, in our opinion, was telling us the truth.
So I think there was a reasonable suspicion that she was dead by then, on Thanksgiving morning.
Having established that David had no opportunity to murder Corey, he's eliminated as a suspect. Detectives are now pursuing a new theory that Corey was murdered after 6 p.m. on Wednesday and before David's call around 11 a.m. on Thanksgiving Thursday. They now focus their attention on the timeline, specifically Wednesday night, when Corey was going out for the evening.
We're just looking for anyone that is close to Corey or that had contact with Corey on Wednesday night. And one of the people that said, hey, you know, Corey was my friend and I was with her on Wednesday night was Tiffany.
Seeming desperate to help the investigation, Corey's friend Tiffany Zienta volunteers to come down to the station.
Tiffany described her relationship with Corey as one of very, very close, really good friends. She said a couple of times that she loved Corey.
Tiffany said they were at the Ritz Bar. The Ritz Bar is a very well-known hangout of young adults, professional adults that work all day and they end up there. It's the place to be if you're somebody. That night, there was Corey, Tiffany, and there was at least 3 or 4 of her girlfriends.
Tiffany explains that she was with Corey all evening at the Ritz Bar until they left at 1:30 a.m. in their separate cars. And there's more.
One of the things Tiffany tells police about that night was that Corey had gotten into a bit of an altercation with a mutual acquaintance named Gregory at the Ritz Bar that night.
Tiffany made it sound like it was something significant with Gregory. And so we wanted to know what he had to say about that.
Gregory told the police that everything was fine that night. He told them he didn't know Corey that well and that, nothing out of the ordinary happened.
He bumped into her or something, and she turned around and looked at him, and it was just really nothing, according to him.
When police talked to Corey's other friends that were at the Ritz that night, they validated Gregory's story.
As far as we knew, there was nothing to indicate that Greg had a problem with Corey. But Tiffany made it sound more like it was something significant. So it appeared that she was actually lying about it, and our suspicions were heightened.
According to Corey's friends, Tiffany exaggerated how close she and Corey were, that they were not as close as she described.
I got the sense that she wanted the relationship to be more than Corey sounded like from her friends. Tiffany was one that, not to use the word alpha, but was a very confronting person.
Corey's friends believe Tiffany may have had a sexual interest in Corey, and that kind of got the attention of police because here you had a crime scene where the victim was posed sexually, but there was no evidence of a rape.
So often in these kinds of killings, the woman was sexually assaulted, either before her death or after, or while she was being killed. In this case, we know that she wasn't, and that's unusual. And for investigators, that would have been a really important part of the motive. Why did this happen? And what enjoyment did the killer get out of her death?
So you look at that and you try to evaluate, okay, whether or not there could have been some one-sided love interest on the part of Tiffany, and that maybe she killed Corey as some sort of a jilted lover, or maybe she was upset that Corey had found this new boyfriend and was dating him and had pushed her out.
Having established a motive, detectives theorize that when Tiffany and Corey left the bar together at 1:30 a.m., albeit in their own cars, Tiffany had the opportunity to follow Corey home and murder her.
Tiffany appeared to have knowledge of the crime scene that she really, in our opinion, should not have had. We learned that she knew details of what happened to Corey. Where did she get that information from? How does she know what happened to Corey if she wasn't there herself? Can she be the killer?
Tiffany's a big person, much in stature, much bigger than Corey. And I'm thinking it would have taken somebody much bigger to overpower Corey and to have controlled her in that confined area in the bedroom. So when Tiffany came into the picture, I could see where a female of her size could have been the one that killed Corey Parker.
Detectives are closing in on a prime suspect in Corey Parker's murder, her friend, Tiffany.
Tiffany's interest in Corey seemed to be a little over the top from your normal friendship, so we definitely wanted to look at that. And that's what investigators are focusing on.
They zero in on the end of the evening at 1:30 a.m. when Tiffany says she and Corey left the Ritz bar in their separate cars.
Tiffany, Corey, and other group of friends left the Ritz, going home. Well, Tiffany stated that she was taking a friend home in Ponte Vedra. Corey went to her residence. Tiffany would later tell her friends that she was going to spend the night with Corey. But Tiffany said while en route to Corey's house, she called Corey on his cell phone saying, "If it got late, coming from Ponte Vedra, and I changed my mind. I'm not going to make it. I'm just going to go home, go to bed. I'll see you tomorrow."
We pulled Corey's phone records, and there was no record of Tiffany's call on Corey's phone records.
Detectives confront Tiffany with this information.
She said, "I was very intoxicated," and she said, "I was speed dialing all of my friends," and she said, "I thought I talked to Corey, but maybe I was talking to someone else." And then she told me that she went by the apartment. It was late, it was about 4 in the morning, and that the apartment was dark, and she didn't get an answer to the door, so she went on home. We strongly feel that based on the condition of the body when it was found on Friday and the circumstances of her death, we believe that she was most likely killed in the hours following her immediate return to her house on early Thursday morning.
Detectives believe Tiffany had the opportunity to kill Corey and dig deeper into her alibi.
She said she took a friend home to Ponte Vedra, but other than that, nobody saw her come home that night. Nobody confirmed that they heard her come in. So Tiffany didn't have an airtight alibi.
Tiffany's lack of a bona fide alibi puts detectives onto a different theory.
We believe that she had come on to Corey inside the apartment, and Corey put up a struggle. And Tiffany didn't want that to come out, that she was gay or that she had wanted a relationship more than Corey did. And so Tiffany killed Corey Parker.
Tiffany had the opportunity and a possible motive, but they need to place her in Corey's apartment at the time of the murder. If they can connect her DNA to the hair found in Corey's underwear, then they can prove she's the killer.
The problem was we couldn't talk to her because she had lawyered up, so we couldn't get samples of her DNA. So we had to secure a search warrant.
When DNA is subpoenaed, it means it's ordered by the court. So there is no alternative. It has to be provided.
This is usually done after other attempts have been made to obtain that DNA, because as soon as you serve them with that subpoena, they know right away now that they are in play as a potential suspect. And you hope that they comply with the order, but they could also jump on a plane.
We went to serve a search warrant, and she had moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She picked up all of her belongings and moved in a real quick, hastily move, which to me drew more attention to her. A lot of, with me, red flags started flying. We had to actually fly to Louisiana and interview her in Baton Rouge.
You've got a court order commanding you to do this, so if you have to hold her down and draw her blood, you're going to do that.
But when the results come back from the lab, Tiffany's DNA isn't a match, and she is eliminated as a suspect.
We really believe that she was a suspect because she knew details of the crime scene. Well, we learned that she was a bartender at a local restaurant, and the firefighters that responded to the scene had been in the restaurant and had been telling her what they observed there because they knew she knew Corey.
Tiffany's behavior is really hard to explain. As murder investigations go, she acted the part of a potentially guilty person just by her behavior.
Could be that, Tiffany wanted attention, or maybe she actually did want to help solve the case. But there's a very strong theme of fantasy here, and maybe that was just to have a more in-depth relationship than what's actually the case.
Determined to find Corey's killer, detectives expand the scope of their investigation to the restaurant where she worked.
Eric Eli was an employee that was infatuated with Corey. She would make complaints about this guy. There was a back area that they go to smoke at in the restaurant. Well, other employees would say that when Corey was there, Eric Eli, he would jump up on the wall and start doing push-ups.
He would ask her out. Corey, being Corey, would try to let him down gently and be nice to him. But from all accounts, she had no interest in dating him. And he couldn't really take no for an answer.
Corey told Eric that she did not date coworkers. And Eric's response to that was, well, I'll quit my job. That sort of piques your curiosity. So, yes, we were interested in Eric at that point.
With Eric now in their crosshairs, detectives bring him down to the station for questioning.
There's a couple things that get the detectives' attention. The most noticeable are these marks, like injuries on around his hands, that looked as if someone had scratched or clawed at him. He explained those away, or attempted to. It's just part of his job.
Eric basically denied killing Corey, and then he eerily gave details that were similar to what actually occurred in the crime scene. He made some statements that, Yeah, if I would have done it, I didn't do it now, but if I would have done it, I would have cut her throat, I would have raped her.
Eric talked about how he would have stabbed her multiple times. He would have left the body in the condition that it was. And it was actually very disturbing.
I mean, why did he need to volunteer that? And a normal person, to me, in a normal state of mind, would not come in and give us that kind of detail. And so, yeah, you're beginning to think that there's something wrong with this guy and that he could be your killer.
Detectives are zeroing in on Corey Parker's co-worker, Eric Eli, as her killer, and theorize he was motivated by rejection.
Eric, to me, stands out as right away a very viable suspect. I mean, here is someone who has been rejected by the victim. Here is someone who places great erotic value on destructive and violent activities, essentially rape fantasies. We understand that these fantasies typically don't stay fantasies and that they could be actually taking the step to commit murder.
But detectives need to prove Eric had the opportunity to kill Corey and look into his alibi.
He told us on Thanksgiving Day, he made her a Thanksgiving dinner and then called her to invite her over. Of course, she didn't answer the phone, but, you know, just that he would go to that length was just weird. It was just strange. But is he off his rocker or did he actually do it?
That could have been him throwing them off the trail, creating an alibi for himself.
So you have to go to your physical evidence. You want to find out whether any of his head hairs or pubic hairs are on the sheets or on her body. Is his hair the forcibly removed head hair in the panties?
Eric agrees to give a DNA sample, but when the results come in, they turn the entire investigation on its head.
There was no match on any of it. I mean, there's no physical evidence match to him, no fingerprints in the apartment, none of his hairs were on her bed. None of his hairs were in her panties, so you know, you can't put him there, and you can't say that he killed her just based on his crazy statements. So I wrote him off as far as the suspect goes. I mean, you just don't want to see these things go unsolved, and so you dig and you keep on, because he who solves the crime is the person that looks, relooks, and relooks. You just keep digging. And it never ends until you find your killer.
Detectives are under enormous pressure to solve Corey's murder and put Jacksonville Beach at ease.
There was a lot of fear in the community. I knew a lot of women that lived alone, and a lot of them got really fearful after this happened.
We were definitely afraid. You know, the whole town was just on pins and needles, just wondering who it could be, why, and if it was going to happen again. It was just crazy.
Corey Parker's case has gone cold, and now the Parker family is offering a $20,000 reward for information leading to an arrest.
Wanted posters went up around the beach with Corey's picture and the reward amount and the number to call.
The reward campaign nets some responses, and as news tips roll in, one in particular catches the detective's attention.
These 4 individuals, they were all workers at a barbecue restaurant in Jacksonville Beach, and they started talking about the case.
One of the tips was from a coworker of Robert Denny. Denny had worked at the local barbecue restaurant, and this particular coworker recalled that around the time of the murder, that Robert Denny was acting a little strange. When the detectives looked up Robert Denny in their database, they discovered he was one of the neighbors that they talked to right after the murder. He told them he didn't see anything, didn't know anything, and nothing about him at that time raised any red flags. He was a 17-year-old kid living at the beach with his sister.
We were able to find out from the sister that he was bringing pornography into the house. He had some nocturnal habits that she wasn't real pleased with. Robert had been what she called sort of a night creeper. He would stand outside the residence at night smoking a cigarette and would actually try to peep in her windows. And so she kicked him out.
She gave the detectives information about Robert Denny's brother, who, as it so happened, was in prison in Texas for stabbing a woman 86 times. And that was eerily similar to what had happened to Corey.
And you start thinking, well, is Robert trying to outdo his brother?
It makes you wonder, what's the role of nature and nurture here? Could the same factors be at play for Robert as with his brother? That being said, biology isn't destiny.
Detectives go looking for Robert Denny at the address where he was living at the time of Corey's murder, but he's long gone.
We were able to take a look around and see that both from inside and outside that Robert had a full view of Corey's apartment. So he was able to look out his bedroom window and see Corey coming or going. If she had her blinds open, he could see right into her kitchen and living room area. We talked to the manager of the barbecue restaurant and also another coworker, and they told us that they had both been over to his apartment on separate occasions, and he had referenced the girl downstairs, Corey. He had been watching her.
There were a lot of arrows pointing in Robert Denny's direction at that point, but the detectives still didn't have really anything tying him to this crime. There was no direct evidence that Robert Denny had anything to do with this.
With Robert Denny now the prime suspect in Corey Parker's murder, detectives scour his background and learn he's in Easton, Maryland.
He had met this 52-year-old woman online in a chat room type situation, and she had told him via email she represented herself to him as a 25-year-old girl. He represented himself to her as a 25-year-old male. She said, well, if you're ever in Easton, drop by. Well, in January, freezing cold, she opens the door one night to a knock on the door, and there he's standing in a pair of jean shorts and a t-shirt. So she lets him in. Well, come to find out, she let him move in. We contacted the Easton police, and so we come up with this story that the police chief's son up there in Easton was injured as a result of a fight, and that Robert matched the general description of the suspect in that case and asked him for a sample of his DNA.
With their plan in motion, detectives get Robert Denny to come to the station.
So we asked to get a DNA sample from him to compare to the evidence in that case. And he said, I don't decline, but I'd like to talk to my attorney first. So we gave him a bottle of water, see if he'll drink from that. If he does, we get his saliva, and we get his DNA that way. He looked at the bottle of water, he took it in his hand, but he never drank from it. Then we took him for a break out in the garage to have him smoke cigarettes, and when he was done smoking the cigarette, we were hoping that he'd drop the cigarette in the ashtray, and we could go get it. But he took the butt and put it behind his ear. He wouldn't put it out in the ashtray. So, who does that? Nobody does that.
Police use all reasonable techniques to secretly obtain that DNA, whether by following somebody around, hoping that they discard a beverage container or a cigarette butt or what have you, or by checking their garbage. This is the unglamorous area of police work that solves cases.
Intent on securing a sample of Robert Denny's DNA, detectives take a different tack.
We had generated these forms saying, hey, I, Robert Denny, have been asked for my DNA sample. I declined to give this sample. And then we were going to get him to sign it, date it, and then put it in an envelope and lick it and seal it. And then we'd have his DNA on the envelope. So then we did the forms, asked him to sign that. Well, he looked at it, read it, and then he put down there, I don't decline. I would just like to speak to my attorney. So we asked him, okay, well, how about sealing that in the envelope?
He told us, nice try. I know what you're trying to do. You're not going to get my DNA. So he was on his toes. He was thinking at all times.
He outsmarted us there. And so we knew he was savvy, and I was even more convinced at that point that he was our guy because, he's avoiding every effort to get his DNA sample. But, I was committed to solving this case, and I wasn't leaving Easton, Maryland until I got a sample of his DNA.
After a number of dead ends in their investigation, detectives are closing in on Corey Parker's killer, but they need physical evidence to prove their case.
The last day there, we were doing a surveillance of Robert's business.
He worked at a computer store there in downtown Easton, and we were able to watch him as he would come out here about every 40, 45 minutes to smoke a cigarette.
We were waiting for the instance where if he would leave the cigarette, they would extract the DNA from the cigarette. We never did. He would break the filters off and put the filter in his pocket, throw the tobacco down to the ground.
But unbeknownst to us, he had a uncontrollable spitting habit where he would arbitrarily just spit on the ground. And we kind of noted where the spit went in the parking lot. So he then turns around, walks into the computer store, and then we walk up there and we see the spit. And so I took my Q-tips and went up there and swabbed 7 different areas. Let those dry, packaged them up, drove them over to the FBI lab in DC. 2 weeks later, the FBI DNA analyst called me and said that he had identified Robert Denny's DNA from the spit to the hair in Corey's panties. He was also able to identify Robert Denny's DNA as matching the blood from the inside lip of the kitchen sink, which put him in the apartment. So we were jumping for joy at that point.
He was one in hundreds of billions of people that were eliminated. He was the only person that could have committed that crime.
Detectives proceed with arresting Robert Denny.
I am Detective Sergeant Billy Carlisle from the Jacksonville Beach, Florida Police Department. Are you able?
He's a sick nuts.
Okay, sure. Take
Sorry.
That's okay.
Oh.
He was hyperventilating, and when we told him he was under arrest, he says, for what? And we said, for a murder in Jacksonville Beach. I'd like to give you this opportunity to explain to me what happened.
What happened? No, just wait.
His face went white, and all the blood ran out of his face. He denied killing Corey.
And I'm looking you in the eyes when I tell you, swear to God, I didn't do this.
Robert, you don't want to be man enough to...
No, I am a man. I'm a hell of a man, and I'm honest, and I tell the truth, and I'm telling you the truth right now that I didn't do this.
And he stuck to that and never gave an admission. But we didn't need it.
Investigators are now able to piece together the final 24 hours of Corey Parker's life.
1 o'clock, she was baking pies with her neighbor, Ashley, most of the afternoon until about 6. At 10 p.m., she meets up with Tiffany at the Ritz bar, and they kind of hang out there till about 1:30 in the morning. Corey drives home. Police believe that Robert Denny was already in her apartment when she got home, that he had snuck in after she left, probably through that kitchen window.
We believe that she was killed in those hours immediately following the time period when she returned home and locked herself inside her apartment. Woman's worst nightmare. You're inside your own apartment, locked inside, feeling safe. You go to crawl in your bed, and then out of the clear blue, someone jumps in bed with you and starts attacking you. It was apparent that she fought the suspect valiantly before she died.
No doubt about it. Each one of those stabs is actually a surrogate sex act. Was there a conventional rape? No. Was this a sexual homicide? Absolutely.
Robert Denny is convicted of first-degree murder on April 28, 2005. he is sentenced to life in prison.
Robert Denny does not look the part of a killer. You know, he was a young, clean-cut teenager, but clearly perception isn't everything.
He's a sociopath, you know, he just doesn't care for life and doesn't matter to him that she's dead, and I don't think he regrets it to this date other than the fact that he's locked up, can't get out of prison. It's probably the most significant case of my career, 43 years in law enforcement so far and still going. You know, it was a lot of hard work and a lot of time and effort, but the end result for the family and for, you know, the citizens of this community is unmeasurable.
I call my daughter every night since then. My daughter's a beautiful young lady that's doing exactly what Corey does. She's going to school, she's holding down jobs, she has her own apartment. It hit me as a father, that could have been my daughter. We got our guy off the street that could have been involved in many more homicides.
My favorite memory of Corey is probably her smile. To keep her memory alive is to talk about her, to talk about her story, to talk about the way that she lit up a room. And I won't stop talking about her. I think she, in the small amount of time that she was here and the amount of people that she affected in a positive way, that story won't die.
This was something new to us, a bombing in broad daylight, you know, a resort country club. It was shocking.
A violent explosion.
He suffered a traumatic injury from the shrapnel and the shock wave. His death was instantaneous.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
Emotions flare. She has a temper. She's mad at Gary, and it's alleged that she might have a weapon.
Gary had lots of enemies. There were millions of dollars owed to different people.
He said, I'm going to kill Gary Triano because he ripped me off.
He may have had dealings with the mob, and he ends up killed in a car bombing. Those two things could go together.
The truth will be revealed.
This is like the dogs in the chase. It's a trail that we can't not follow.
That was the smoking gun to show that they had committed this murder.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. In the Arizona desert lies the city of Tucson, a pleasure seeker's oasis, blessed with beautiful landscapes and year-long sunshine.
Tucson does have its upper-class areas that are designed around recreation and relaxation, you know, the country clubs, the plush golf courses. Years ago, real estate was booming. They were building resort destinations. You had celebrities coming here just to vacation because they wanted to stay at those kind of places. That type of luxury lifestyle was really growing in Tucson.
But on November 1st, 1996, the upscale world of the city's rich and famous is brutally shattered.
911, what are you reporting? There's a car explosion in the parking lot.
Is it on fire?
Yes, it is.
911, what is the emergency? La Paloma Country Club. Bomb just blew up in a car.
We have an explosion in the country club parking lot. I'm
Okay, that's a vehicle?
I'm not sure there's a fire and we need paramedics.
The 911 calls came in about 5:40 p.m.
There'd been an explosion. There was one person deceased. I could see even before I walked up that the car was completely destroyed.
The roof has been torn off of it. All the doors were blown open from the shock wave. The glass obviously is shattered out of the vehicle. The windshield had flown south over 100, 150 feet and had landed in the swimming pool of the country club.
It was something we hadn't seen before. Tucson, like any community, has some awful murders that go on, but we'd never seen a bombing in broad daylight, a resort country club. This was something new to us. It was shocking.
The victim is local business tycoon, 52-year-old Gary Triano.
Gary Triano, he started out as just a working businessman trying to make a living, and he went from that to being a multimillionaire land developer.
Gary was really kind of an amazing person. He was a high flyer in the sense of he had this ability to raise large amounts of money for different investment ventures.
He had 5 children, 2 from his first marriage, 2 from his second marriage, and then he also had a 5th child with his ex-girlfriend, Robin. Gary Triano was larger than life. He was so charismatic. I knew him personally, and always a gentleman, and always the life of the party.
Tasked with investigating the murder of Gary Triano are detectives James Gamber and Keith St. John. They start by surveying the crime scene looking for evidence.
Mr. Triano was still very intact. He suffered a lot of blast injury to his right hand, his right arm, and to the right side of his face. And a lot of it was thermal injury, where it's burning from the heat of the explosion. And there was a lot of traumatic injury from the shrapnel and the shock waves. His death was instantaneous. We relied on our bomb technicians to tell us where the explosion took place. They pointed to the right front passenger seat, so the device was sitting right here. It was very easy to determine from his injuries that he had been essentially leaning over towards the front passenger seat and had been picking something up when the device detonated. The bomb techs also discovered some burnt material, and it was from a gym bag.
Detectives determined the killer likely put the bomb in the gym bag and then placed it on the front seat of Gary's vehicle.
The bomb techs amazed me again because they actually recovered the radio crystal from the remote control device. And they find parts of the servo in the blast scene. So now we know it's a remotely detonated device.
We learned that the radio waves had to be line of sight. That gave us the best clue that the killer was in the parking lot when the device went off.
This was someone sitting there watching, and they pushed a button and made it go off.
The mindset of somebody that could sit there and just calmly switch a button on a remote control and blow him up, that's pretty perverse. It's devoid of any sort of human feeling when you can just calmly switch a button and snuff out another human life.
That a person would sit and wait for the precise time to set the explosion off indicated it was somebody that was stalking, someone that had planned the murder. It just wasn't random.
Time of death in a lot of homicide investigations is a real open question.
In this case, the explosion was so powerful that it stopped Gary Triano's watch at the precise time of the explosion.
And it stopped at exactly 5:38 p.m.
To catch the killer, detectives will need to unravel the last 24 hours of Gary Triano's life.
Gary had been golfing with a friend that afternoon. and they golfed 2:30 to 4:30ish. And after they'd gotten some drinks, a bite to eat in the country club, his golf partner had indicated that it was right around 5:30 that the two of them walked to the parking lot. They chatted, and the golf partner then walked away from Gary's car. And it was just shortly after that that the explosion occurred.
As investigators interview the employees of the country club, they learn something unsettling.
4:15, someone had called the clubhouse asking about Gary Triano.
And the caller's not identified. So this unidentified person says, is he playing golf today? And the pro shop says, yes.
And, given the fact that a little over an hour later, he's in the parking lot and the car explodes, clearly we wanted to know who was making that phone call.
Could have been the killer? Absolutely.
That's something we have to look into. But we couldn't trace the phone call back to its source. After all the different interviews, I didn't see that we had any concrete evidence that anybody saw the killer in the parking lot that night. So we knew we were in for hard work.
Looking for information that could point them in the direction of the killer, detectives speak with Gary's girlfriend, Donna.
Gary's current girlfriend, Donna, was at the scene when I got there and I interviewed her. And obviously she is upset. This is a horrifying incident. Donna and his family members, they want to know what happened, who did this, and I don't have any answers.
Donna tells detectives that while Gary was an optimistic man, the downturn in the economy hit him hard.
From 92 to 93, Gary Triano went from $1.7 million to $107,000. A 93% loss in his income.
He wasn't able to meet his financial obligations. I mean, at the country club, he was behind on his dues, but he always had that belief the next deal is going to work.
But given the amount of debt that he had accumulated in his recent past, that plus the added pressure of who Gary Triano was and his status in the community, there was a lot of stress during that time for Gary.
Gary's financial downfall started to wear on him.
Gary had become a little bit paranoid. He thought he was being followed. And so he became a little wary.
It was some tough times there. I was told by a friend of Gary Triano's that a couple of months prior to the murder that he had told her that he knew somebody was following him, and it was real evident. And he was scared. He didn't know why.
But Donna says she has a good idea who this stalker is.
She told law enforcement, hey, you might want to be looking at the former girlfriend because there was some animosity there.
Robin is a young lady who was the ex-girlfriend. We learned that she had a baby with Gary. The baby wasn't very old at the time of the murder.
Robin reportedly was angry because she had Gary's child and there was no wedding in the future. Donna was able to provide us with a recording of a phone message that was left for Gary. And it has Robin saying, "You're going to pay. Someday you're going to pay."
So when a lover is spurned, there's feelings of rejection there. There's heightened emotion. This increases the odds for very conflictual emotions and perhaps aggressive behavior.
With suspicion swirling around Gary's ex-girlfriend, Robin, detectives dig deeper and learn that a year before the murder, police responded to a domestic violence call at their home.
There's an incident between the two of them where she throws a vase at Gary, and it's alleged that she might have a weapon. In any murder investigation, you obviously look at people that are close to the victim. Who was mad at him? Who was angered by him? So when you look at Robin, she has a temper. She's mad at Gary. And after the birth of the child, emotions flare. Jealousy, anger. Could this anger carry over into a murder?
Believing Gary Triano's former girlfriend, Robin, may have wanted to kill him, detectives track her down at her home. They confront Robin about her angry encounters with Gary.
She says it wasn't a happy separation. There were some angry phone calls, and there was maybe plates broken and things like that.
There was animosity when she first became pregnant. However, after paternity was decided and Gary knew that he was the father, their relationship had gotten better.
Robin tells detectives that she has moved on since Gary and is now married.
I spoke to her current husband, who says, yeah, she has a temper. But her grudges didn't last long. When she's mad, it's gonna happen right here, right now, and it's gonna be over right here and right now.
Detectives ask Robin about her activities on the day Gary was killed. They learn she was home taking care of her child.
Robin's point of view is he's a guy who has always made a comeback. And he is a good father to the child. So she has no benefit in eliminating him. Any future income that might come from him would be gone.
And when detectives look into Robin's alibi on the day of the murder, it checks out, and she's eliminated as a suspect.
So the evidence doesn't take us to Robin, and her personal history doesn't support her being involved in a long-term plot to kill Gary.
Searching for new leads, detectives look deeper into Gary's personal life and turn their focus to another ex, his former wife, Pam Phillips. They track Pam down at her home in Aspen, Colorado.
Pam was very attractive. She knew how to socialize. She was an up-and-comer financially. She was working in the commercial real estate market.
Pam tells detectives she met Gary when he was married, but they fell madly in love. Gary divorced his wife and married Pam in 1986, less than a year after they first met.
They got married in San Diego on a boat. I believe Donald Trump was at the wedding and people like major actors. So it was, you know, champagne flowing, spare no expense type of relationship.
It's been reported that the wedding ring that Pamela got from Gary was valued at $250,000, $250,000.
Pam tells detectives they were very happy. They went on to have 2 children together. But 8 years later, when Gary lost their money, he changed. His moods were up and down, and the relationship suffered.
In 1994, after Gary Triano lost his money, his marriage collapsed as well. There was a lot of tension there, and it was a very contentious divorce.
Pam talked about bringing $2 million of her own money into the relationship when they got married, and she found out that that was gone.
There were a lot of fights about custody issues with respect to who was going to get the children, Gary's financial responsibility.
So Pam Phillips moves to Aspen and takes the children with her to start her new life.
But when you have that kind of acrimonious divorce between Gary and Pam Phillips, it's something that makes you a little concerned about Pam's potential involvement. But, you know, nothing is making sense yet.
Detectives ask Pam about her whereabouts on the day Gary was violently killed.
Pam told us that she was in Aspen that Friday night. And we talked to people that were with her. So we were comfortable that she was in Aspen at the time of the murder.
Having ruled out Pam as a suspect, detectives turned back to the crime scene, looking for new leads.
ATF was reconstructing the bomb from the parts gathered out of the parking lot. And there were a couple things that were interesting about the bomb reconstruction.
The battery supplies were way more energy than it really needed to detonate the device.
That was an indication that perhaps the person was not familiar with making bombs. They were a novice at making bombs. The nature of the bomb itself, 18-inch pipe bomb stuffed with a pound of gunpowder rigged up to this remote control, was not sophisticated, and it was really more indicative of someone that may have learned this from people that were making bombs in the 70s or the 80s. And gave an indication that maybe this was an older individual.
Being able to narrow down a suspect's age can be very important in terms of narrowing the haystack that you're looking for that needle in. That automatically helps point police in the right direction.
Armed with new information about the killer, detectives take another look at Gary Triano's close friends and associates.
Detectives are looking into various financial motives. Gary had lots of business partners, and he had enemies. Former business partners were suing him. I mean, there were millions of dollars, at least alleged, that Gary owed to different people. Could one of them have been responsible for Gary's death? Are any of these people saying, I'm giving up on ever getting my money back, so I'm gonna exact some sort of retribution and kill Gary Triano?
Believing real estate mogul Gary Triano could have been murdered by someone he owed money to, detectives shift their focus to his business associates.
People talked about a man by the name of Neil McNeese. McNeese hated Gary Triano.
McNeese is an actual billionaire who lived here in Tucson. His family had some uranium mines in northern Arizona, and they made a lot of money. Gary had borrowed some money from this guy McNeese. He'd borrowed $80,000, and as collateral, Gary had given McNeese what he claimed to be a $250,000 diamond ring that belonged to the ex-wife, Pam. But according to McNeese, the diamond was fake. It was a cubic zirconium. It was worth, at best, a few $1,000s. Could McNeese have been responsible for the murder because of the $80,000 that Gary hadn't paid him back?
But it turns out the information is a dead end.
McNeese was suspicious, but that doesn't really get you anywhere because there was no evidence at that point in time McNeese had anything to do with the murder at all.
Having exhausted yet another lead, the investigation into Gary Triano's murder stalls.
As an investigator, you want to do the best you can for both the case and especially the family who's just lost a loved one. They're looking to you for answers. And then when you add Gary Triano was well known in the community, there was a lot of stress during that time. The difficult part of this case was just the sheer number of potential suspects that had to be looked at, the number of leads that had to be gone through, and basically triage. You had to look at them and say, well, is this something that really could fit? Not only could it fit, but is there evidence to back up the theory? No, so you moved on to the next one.
Searching for new leads, detectives dig deeper into Gary Triano's business connections, looking for someone angry enough to want to kill him in such a ruthless way.
Gary was really good at getting people to invest money in his projects. Some of the people weren't the kind of people that most of us would seek money from. I mean, there were mobsters back on the East Coast that Gary was indebted to. And so our thought was this mob related? Because you just don't see people getting killed in car bombings in Tucson.
This could be a very promising lead. In this case, when it's revealed that the victim may have had dealings with the mob and he ends up killed in a car bombing, I mean, those two things, conventionally speaking, you would expect to go together.
Detectives learn one of the people Gary Triano owes money to is Gary Fears, a gangster from Florida.
Gary Triano was marketing building a casino on a small island that belonged to the Republic of China. And Gary purported that he had permission from the Chinese government to run a casino there.
Gary Fears fronted a lot of money toward that endeavor. But the endeavor fell through. China wasn't going to allow the gaming.
A lot of people felt that Gary had misrepresented the approval from the People's Republic of China. They only had local officials' approval to do this. Gary Fears is angry. He lost tens of thousands of dollars in total.
He was somebody that had to be looked at. He was not the nicest guy.
word on the street. What people told us is that Gary Fears had a shady background, and he was someone to be feared, someone that you should, you put yourself at risk if you crossed him.
Believing Gary Triano may have been killed as retribution for double-crossing Fears, investigators track him down.
Gary Fears was of interest to us, and you have to evaluate the person. Were they capable of it? Did they have the means, motive, and opportunity?
When police question Fears, he admits that he was furious with Gary Triano about being misled over the China deal.
He says, yeah, I lost tens of thousands of dollars. But Gary Fears was suing Gary Triano to get money back from him. And Gary dissolved all his debts by declaring bankruptcy. It's almost an automatic reflex when your business ventures overwhelm your capital is file bankruptcy and absolve your debt. Gary Fears was greatly frustrated by Gary's financial dealing. Maybe his anger over the money, the financial loss, overrode his common sense.
After a business deal gone bad, police believe mobster Gary Fears may have something to do with the brutal killing of Gary Triano. They ask him point blank if he's responsible for Triano's death.
He goes, very stone cold and absolute, looked at us and said, I'm not going to kill somebody for several $1,000s.
The mob complicates an investigation because it's a tight-knit group that doesn't make mistakes easily. And also they are going to have no problem lying when it comes to police investigations.
Doubtful Fears is being honest with them. Detectives ask him to take a polygraph test.
Mr. Fears agreed to be polygraphed and was asked, again, point blank in the polygraph, did you kill Gary Triano? Did you cause Gary Triano's death? Mr. Fears passed the polygraph. In addition to the polygraph, Gary Fears provides the alibi that he was at a family wedding and there's, credible witnesses who can place him at the wedding at the time of the murder.
We talked to as many people as we could. We found no direct link between Gary Fears and the bombing.
9 years pass, and just when it looks like the case will never be solved, detectives get a surprising new lead from police in Aspen, Colorado.
The explosion here in Tucson made national news, and so I received a call from Detective Crowley in Aspen. He talked about his fraud investigation where a person by the name of Ron Young was a suspect. And according to Detective Crowley, he had a connection with Pam Phillips, Gary's ex-wife.
Ron Young apparently had scammed several people in Aspen. Pam was one of the victims.
Detective Jim Crowley says there's something really odd here. Pam Phillips was alleging that Ron defrauded her for tens of thousands of dollars. And she was very vocal about it within the community. But when we as law enforcement approach her and say, hey, we need to include you in our case, along with these other fraud victims, she just never makes herself available. It's almost as if she's distancing herself from law enforcement. It was interesting.
Detective Crowley outlines Ron Young's scam for the investigators.
Ron Young would befriend people and profess he was a professional, somebody who knew finances for small businesses. And he would become involved in that business and then take money from the business.
He's defrauding people under the guise of, you'll end up with more money in the bank if you let me handle your financial matters. And he convinced people to let him do it. And the whole time he's skimming your money, he's taking it and putting it in his pocket.
When Aspen police go to arrest Ron for fraud, they discover he has fled the state. They track down his van in California. Ron is nowhere to be found, but what they find in the van turns the investigation on its head.
Jim Crowley looks at Ron Young's van and finds Gary Triano's divorce paperwork. There's a list of people who would know Gary Triano. And there's also a map of Tucson.
What they find next raises detectives' suspicions to the next level.
We find a receipt for a local hotel that puts Ron Young in a hotel that's essentially halfway between where Gary Triano's living and the La Paloma Country Club, where he was killed. He's there for about 18 days in the month of July 1996. So does that coincide with when Gary felt like he was being followed? We are exploring every possibility.
Certainly, we're starting to think, did Ron Young have something to do with Gary Triano's death? Was there some sort of relationship beyond this fraudulent activity between Pam Phillips and Ron Young?
Detectives Gamber and St. John take another look at Pam Phillips and find something that raises a red flag.
Even though the divorce had been finalized for quite some time, Pam continued to carry a $2 million life insurance policy on Gary's life. And that catches your eye.
The life insurance policy pays the money to Gary and Pam's 2 children. Since the children are below the age of 18, the $2 million goes directly to Pam.
So in January of 1997, Pam Phillips gets $2.1 million because of Gary's death.
But it's what detectives learn next that puts the spotlight directly on Pam.
Up till that point in time, Pam had been living in a duplex. Within a few months of getting the money, Pam has moved from that duplex into what I can only describe as a beautiful, beautiful home that she has now purchased with the proceeds from the life insurance policy. That raised some concerns with investigators because the children were the primary beneficiaries, and now this money is being used to buy this really lavish home.
So when you follow the money, Pam has a $2 million reason for Gary to die.
Believing Pam Phillips and Ron Young may have conspired to kill Gary Triano, investigators pay another visit to Pam in Aspen.
When they ask her about Ron Young, there's an audible gulp. Where did that come from kind of reaction from her, which immediately caught our attention.
She maintained that she had hired him to help her business. That's all it was. She claimed that although she didn't want to prosecute, that, he had taken some money from her, and she didn't know where he was.
People lie to the police all the time, and a lot of times it's good to have those lies because if you can prove a lie, that's even more important than a confession. I felt Pam was definitely minimizing her relationship with Ron Young.
Investigators speak to Pam's circle of friends, hoping to uncover the truth about her relationship with Ron.
The nanny that worked for Pam in Aspen, he describes a very intimate, ongoing relationship.
Ron Young would come over for dinner. There'd be candlelight, there'd be wine, and the two of them would disappear to the upstairs bedroom for the night.
So their relationship goes well beyond the scope of what she had described to us.
There's a growing concern about what Pam and Ron Young did. Could they have been responsible for Gary's death? Could one of them have been the bomber? We're pretty sure it's not Pam because, she has an alibi. She was in Aspen at the time. But could Pam have hired Ron Young or got him in some way to commit the murder?
This is like the dogs in the chase. It's a trail that we can't just not follow.
Working the theory that Gary Triano's ex-wife Pam Phillips could be the mastermind behind his brutal murder, detectives focus on finding her missing accomplice, Ron Young.
We're thinking if we could get Ron Young, we might be able to fill in a lot of the blanks that are here. Because something is really fishy about what's going on.
There's an arrest warrant for Ron Young, but no one can find him. This guy is gone. He is off the face of the earth.
Detectives turn to a different strategy, hoping to get a lead.
We go to America's Most Wanted and say, would you feature this guy? We want to find him. We have the fraud case, and we have the fact that we think he's directly involved in a homicide in Tucson. So America's Most Wanted ultimately does the TV show, and they feature Ron Young.
Detectives soon get their big break from a caller in Florida.
A caller says, I'm Ron Young's chiropractor. I know him as Kelly Young, but that's definitely the same guy. And he says, he has an appointment with me tomorrow.
Because of this TV show, we know where Ron Young is, we know where to find him, we know where he's going to be at 10 o'clock the next morning. This is a huge break in the case. The Broward County Sheriff's Department sends their fugitive team out to the chiropractors, and sure enough, right on time at the appointment, here comes Ron Young, and he's taken into custody.
Ron Young is arrested on fraud charges, then flown to Arizona to be interrogated by Tucson police.
Ron Young is a con man. He's confident, he's relaxed, he's amiable, he'll talk to you about everything and anything, but he won't ever answer a direct question.
With Ron in their crosshairs, investigators press him for answers.
What's your relationship with Pam Phillips? Do you know Gary Triano? For hours, we sat there and talked to him. He says he knows nothing about Gary's insurance policy. He has never been to Tucson. Just hours and hours of long, roundabout denials.
But while Ron Young doesn't give up any information, his belongings do.
ATF agents search his hotel room, his apartment, and his storage locker. There's a box of stuff. In that box are about 15 microcassettes.
It was a mother lode of information. There were years and years of correspondence between Pam Phillips and Ron Young. And although they don't get specific, that I went out and killed Gary Triano for you, he says things that are more sort of shaded. Like, I did something for you that nobody else would have done in the world. I took care of the problem that you were having.
You sent my money yet? My principal?
I am not going to keep sending you more and more and more money unless I know that you can honor our agreement. I want this definitive now.
Well, I do too.
And I'm going to try to figure out how to get it to you. I want to know that we are capping it at 4.
From the recordings, investigators learned Pam had an arrangement with Ron where she'd pay him $400,000 out of the life insurance money to kill her ex-husband, Gary Triano. But it seems she was late on her payments.
And we have a disagreement.
I am very serious about this.
Well, I tell you, you're going to be very serious when you sit in a women's prison for murder. You're going to be really sad.
I'm going to be back at 4.
No, you're going to be in prison for murder.
That was chilling. When I heard that, that was absolutely chilling.
By keeping audio recordings, it implicates himself, but at the same time, it's a bargaining chip to ensure that if he were to ever go down, he was going to make sure that she went down with him.
That was, in fact, the smoking gun to show that the two of them had committed this murder.
This is incredible. I mean, this is just this side of a confession.
Based on all the evidence, detectives now believe Pam orchestrated Gary Triano's murder.
Pam Phillips stood to gain a lot by having Gary dead, $2 million.
Pam Phillips was coming down to her last few $1,000s. She didn't have any immediate prospects of marrying another millionaire, and she needed to do something. She had this life insurance policy there, and in Ron Young, she found someone that she could manipulate, and she was using him with this sexual relationship. So she was able to convince him, with the promise of payment, into killing her ex-husband.
In this case, is this some kind of an archetype of a black widow who is motivated to maintain relationships for their own monetary gain? I see perhaps Pam as somebody who felt entitled, both in terms of a particular lifestyle, not just finances. And so perhaps she felt that she was owed and deserved more and went after what she thought was rightfully hers.
Prosecutors charge Pam Phillips and Ron Young with the murder of Gary Triano.
When we go to arrest Pam, we find out approximately a week prior to the warrants being issued, she had left the United States. She's gone. Working with different law enforcement agencies, eventually we find out Pam is in Lugano, Switzerland. We have details down to the apartment that she's staying at. We know what car she's driving, who she's dating, and where she has lunch most every day. We have that locked down. But we went to arrest Pam in Switzerland and she wasn't there. That was a huge disappointment. Eventually, through Interpol, she's ultimately found in a hotel in Austria.
We extradite her back to the United States. One of the things we had to do, because the European Union does not have the death penalty, we had to agree that we would not seek the death penalty in her case.
Back in the United States, Pam Phillips refuses to cooperate with law enforcement.
Pam never gave us a statement. I more expected that Ron Young would give us a statement implicating Pam, and he never said a word. Neither one of them would talk against the other. But we have all this evidence about what might have happened here.
Detectives are now able to reconstruct the final 24 hours of Gary Triano's life.
November 1st, 1996, Gary went to lunch with a friend. They had their lunch at 1 in the afternoon. Then Gary proceeded over to the La Paloma Country Club.
2:30 to 4:30, he's out golfing with a friend. During that period of time, when he went to the golf course that afternoon, Ron Young was stalking him. Ron Young had the bomb that would end his life. At 3:30, while Gary's on the golf course, Ron Young walks up to his car. He has the bag that conceals the bomb. Then Ron Young places it on the front passenger seat of Gary's car and walks away. At the end of golfing, around 5:30, Gary pays his bill and he walks out into the parking lot. Then at 5:38, Ron Young flips a switch on the remote control. The device detonates and the car explodes, killing Gary Triano.
The family put up with a lot from us. All our failings, they put up with those. And then finally, I was able to call Gary's oldest daughter. She was the family representative, and I got her on the phone and I was able to tell her, we found the killers.
In October 2008, Ron Young and Pam Phillips are charged with conspiracy and first-degree murder. They're both sentenced to life in prison with no parole.
After Pam Phillips is convicted of killing Gary Triano, she stands up in court, looks at the audience, and in the front row were Gary Triano's family. She looks at them and she says, "I did not do this. I did not kill Gary. I am not responsible. He is the father of my children. I did not do this."
But investigators are convinced they finally brought Gary Triano's killers to justice.
It was important to us to hold accountable the people that we had no doubt committed this murder. This was not a rage killing. This was not a spur-of-the-moment killing. This took lots and lots of planning. So when you think about the fact that Pam's carrying on with her life, she's raising her children, and at the same time for months, she's planning that her ex-husband is going to die. That's cold, that's cruel, and that's what stands out to me. Had Gary lived, he would have been 71. So this family had waited 18 years for some justice to come about.
All homicides are sad. But in this case, I knew the victim, and I knew the persons involved, and how the Triano family was devastated. I don't think there's ever closure. So while they may have closure with the persons responsible are now in prison and will never hurt anybody again, it still doesn't bring Gary back.